As I walked out of my press screening for Scream 7, in IMAX, by the way, what a delightful surprise. But while this is the first time a Scream movie has been shown in IMAX, I believe, it's not like they filmed it for IMAX. So while I always enjoy being in a premium theater, it didn't really make a huge difference. I think Dolby or another premium screen would be just fine. But as I walked out of the movie, I heard someone else exclaim, "It feels more like a stab movie than a Scream movie." Ouch! An insult of the film worthy of the franchise itself because it's so meta. And of course, Stab is the fake movie franchise within the very real movie franchise that is Scream. And, not only did I chuckle at the cleverness of that comment, but I thought part of it was true. I would say that the third act does feel like a Stab movie, but the first two-thirds, I think they're Scream-worthy. I enjoyed the first two-thirds of the movie. I'd say that Scream 7's biggest problem, besides angering a number of its fans and people even outside of the franchise over how they treated Melissa Barrera, there were protesters, only a handful, but noticeably, at the premiere last night. But then in addition to that, the film itself is bogged down, not just by nostalgia bait, but by having to be just so meta. Of course, nobody will ever forget the iconic first film, which was brilliantly meta, but it only had to reference horror movies in general because it was first. But now, with the 7th installment, which is an impressive milestone, so much time has to be spent on being meta about the Scream franchise itself that there's almost no time for character development. So even if you have kills that are excellent, which this movie has, it takes a little bite out of them, a little of the sting out, if you don't care as much about the characters. All right, before we dig into what works with this movie and what doesn't, without spoilers, although there are plenty of spoilers all over the place because a number of as some of you pointed out, spoilers have always been an issue for this franchise and so far haven't heard it. But I think some of it this time is fueled by revenge for Melissa Barrera. And she even acknowledged it, by the way, which I thought was interesting. But I will say, I had fun watching most of this movie. I thought it was a good time at the movies. Is it one of the best Scream movies? Of course not. But is it one of the worst? No, it is not either. And I think this franchise still has some great elements and characters. And at the end of this review, in fact, I'm going to talk about what I think could potentially be the future of Scream. Is it on the big screen? Is it anywhere? All right, with all this drama and the divide on the film itself, the Rotten Tomatoes score so far, is that good? Everyone's wondering how things are going to go down at the box office this weekend. And be sure to subscribe because we're going to be talking about it on Sunday on Movie Math. All right, so what did I like about Scream? I think the film is very timely. I was impressed with how they updated it, not just with technology, but with the current culture of celebrity and fandom. It uses things like cell phones and security systems quite well, not just their advantages, but also their disadvantages. I liked that. And also, the current trend of themed Airbnbs. I think loved maybe is a strong word, but I really liked the opening for this movie. I thought it was really great. Well, as great as it could be with relatively unknown actors like Jimmy Tatro. He's been around for a while. And then there's McHale Randolph, a fellow Randolph, although no relation, who's an up-and-coming actress on Landman, where she's so much fun. But here, unfortunately, she's stuck playing a wet blanket. Their roles were underwritten, but the scenario they were put in was just, as I said, fantastic. But I do miss that this franchise used to have its first kill be a major cameo. What the heck happened? I would suspect that Melissa Barrera happened. I think they might have found themselves having a hard time getting a big name who would want to get involved in that situation, understandably. And they've been kind of going downhill on the first major cameo as well. But I think they need to, if they're going to keep going with Scream movies, they need to get back to having a really impressive cameo for the first kill. Still, the tension in the opening scene, so good. In fact, the whole film uses tension incredibly well. I know it's jump scares, but that's what a slasher movie is. And it was so intense that forget peeking at the screen. A lot of the time I just was like, I'm out, and just totally hid my eyes and was just waiting. When I heard the audience go, oh my God, that's when I'm going to see it again. And now I know when the killer's going to come out, so I can see a little bit more of what happens. I thought, I get scared very easily with these slasher movies, and this one was fun. It was fun, but they really did a good job in that regard, I felt. The kills are excellent, right? And as always for this franchise, pretty creative. I thought they came up with some really good scenarios. Also, I don't know if any of you will notice this, but Ghostface wears a sparkly cloak this time. There's one point where he's on the high school stage and the spotlight really lights him up. Oh, he's sparkling. It's beautiful. But he actually has that on for the entire film. And I thought it was such an interesting choice. And I wondered why the film never bothered to explain it, or why nobody even commented on it. I'd be like, did you notice while we were running for our lives that Ghostface is, kind of glam? I thought it was really an interesting choice. And it, I don't know. I liked it. You would think, how could you update the costume anymore? And that was interesting. Did any of you catch the sparkles? And I liked the small town setting. I liked being back in a small town. New York was fun, for sure. I mean, I loved that when they had to escape from apartment to apartment in the last movie. That was really great. But being back in a small town not only brings the franchise back to its roots, but, the genre as well. The slasher genre usually takes place in a small town. And so I liked that. Next, I also liked what they did with Sidney. While the Halloween franchise had Laurie Strode eventually go full Sarah Connor and then ridiculous, here they decided to have Sidney go in the opposite direction. I thought that was very clever. And Sidney feels if she just ignores all the Ghostface drama, maybe it'll all go away. Think again, Sidney, particularly because Neve Campbell wants to get paid. And because of Sidney's choice, her daughter never gets training like John Connor did, right? Leaving her daughter vulnerable. Although her dad is the frickin' chief of police of their small town, but I'm sure, like, for instance, the daughter's like, I don't even know how to shoot a gun. And I mean, it's like, your dad's right there. Why did he think of it, right? One has to wonder why he didn't give her at least a little kind of safety training, considering who her mother is. And also just that he's the chief of police. And it's 2026. I mean, like, he's right there, Tatum. Quit your complaining. Oh, yeah. Sidney named her daughter Tatum. At one point, she was like, I have 3 kids. And I was like, where are the other 2? And conveniently, they were somewhere else. For another movie, it's like John McClane having kids, and that never worked out either. But yeah, so Sidney named her oldest daughter after Rose McGowan's character from the first film. And they spent way too much time on that. The daughter's like, why'd you name me after somebody who was murdered? And Sidney's like, she was my best friend. And it's like, I've seen that first movie a number of times. And while Rose McGowan certainly makes an impression, there was like no deep bond between her and Sidney on screen. So those conversations between Sidney and her daughter just don't carry any emotional weight, because you're like, were you guys that close? Really? But we're talking about what I liked, right? And so yes, again, I thought it was clever for Sidney to realize that by trying to protect her daughter, she'd accidentally made it so that her daughter was incapable of protecting herself. That was good. So yes, Neve Campbell did get paid $7 million. And I think she does a nice job here. I know some fans are upset about how she handled things in the situation she left the franchise in because she held out for a bigger payday. And we'll see how the box office goes and if Neve Campbell was worth that amount of money. But I think she did a nice job, right? And there are some particularly nice scenes with her and Courtney Cox's Gale Weathers, highlighting how after all these years and all these Ghostface murders, not only an emotional, but a physical toll has been taken on these 2 women. I thought that it was great to see 2 such strong women also admit to some vulnerability as well. It's just little things, but I was surprised at what a big impact those little moments had. I also really liked how the movie leans into the journalism side of these murders, right? Not just with Gale, but really expanding her world in the Scream space with the twins as her new interns. What a great idea for Gooding and Savoy Brown's characters, who are still just so much fun. I loved having them back. I wish they had more screen time. And also Mark Consuelos, I think, is a fantastic addition as a local reporter who's just trying to get a little bit of ratings as well. I really thought he was very well used. I liked him a lot. All of their scenes were some of my favorites. So how about the rest of the cast? I really liked adding Joel McHale as Sidney's husband. I think he did a fantastic job, and he's kind of like a Dewey replacement. What? Yes, like many Scream fans, I was devastated when Dewey was killed back in Scream 5, and I thought it was a horrible mistake, and I still feel it was a horrible mistake. And I've been feeling that there was no way Dewey could ever be replaced, and what a loss to this franchise. But I gotta say, while McHale isn't as good as Dewey, at least not yet, I think he did a nice job starting to fill that space. I mean, I'm not even a huge Joel McHale fan, but I really loved him instantly in the role. And I thought he brought that same quality, again, as also an officer of the law. And like Dewey, he's not only there to support these strong women, but to occasionally point out when maybe they might want to course correct. I thought that was great. And he's also pretty darn good at going up against Ghostfaces, but without undercutting, the female leads of the franchise. I thought he did I really liked his character. Speaking of goofy Scream characters, I think everyone knows at this point that Matthew Lillard is back in some capacity. He was even at the premiere. And I won't say how he's used or how much, but I will say that I really enjoyed him in the movie. I thought he was fantastic. The role of Stu still fits him like a glove. And he was just fantastic. He really did a lot. And he did a great job. So he did a lot to make it feel like Scream. I also liked seeing Asa German here from Gen V. And also Sam Reckner, while he doesn't have a lot to do, is perfect casting as the boyfriend in a slasher movie. He's got that, teen movie look, but also he seems like suspicious. So he was great. But while, of course, a movie like this needs a lot of characters to not only be suspects, but victims, they just have so many characters here. It's too many. And again, I said it gets in the way of character development. And I don't like the choice of spending so much time when they have limited time on Sidney's daughter. Again, I liked her dynamic with her daughter, but Isabel May isn't compelling in the role and doesn't even seem like Sidney Jr. So it really just doesn't work. And her character is just so dumb. Really, when Sidney is so smart as a final girl, Isabel May, even though it's supposed to be Sidney's fault, some of it should be common sense, Tatum, right? And she just takes, this character takes a lot of time away from characters that are much more interesting. So does Scream always have to focus on high school and or college students, right? As the franchise gets older, why can't the characters in the franchise just get older? Why can't it focus just on a group of adults? And do they always have to have the next generation, right? That's a mistake that Star Wars infamously made. And Scream was able to introduce a new generation very successfully with Melissa Barrera and Savoy Brown and Gooding and Ortega. And it's a shame. It is a shame what happened with Barrera and Ortega. But they still have Savoy Brown and Gooding. Like, this is like the second next generation. And they're still all in the movie. All the generations are still in the movie. And there's just not enough space. So yeah, let's talk more about what I don't like about Scream 7. I think that almost anyone who sees this movie will agree that the last third is really weak. Embarrassingly weak. I'm surprised that the producers, at least of the movie, and the studio wasn't like, your third act's really weak, Kevin, and co-writer Gary Busick. I think you should take another crack at it. Ghostface killers are iconic. They're a special club that this movie itself makes good use of. And nobody is going to, I think, want to remember or see again the killers from this movie. They're just an afterthought. They're a waste. And that's not what the Ghostface killer is supposed to be. I can understand wanting to have their reveal, the reveal of who the killer is a surprise. But I think what has made this franchise so great in the past is that you can look back and be like, oh yeah, those were great clues. But here part of it's kind of obvious, then otherwise it just comes out of nowhere. It's not earned, I guess is the best way to say it. It's just very poorly done in the third act. Also, while Roger L. Jackson continues to do an amazing job as the voice of Ghostface, right? What's your favorite scary movie? They use that very little here. And I think that's a very big mistake. Ghostface isn't just an iconic look. It's an iconic voice and interaction as well. It's a whole package, and they aren't utilizing all of that here. They didn't do the knife wipe, which is so iconic. I mean, they missed out on a couple of things with Ghostface. So where does Scream go from here? I'm seeing a couple of people say that maybe it's time for Ghostface to put his knife away, right? Hang up his cloak. There's one moment, by the way, where Sidney bends his knife. Oh, it was so clever. I loved it. I loved it so much. But, I have to say, I think Ghostface is such a powerful and iconic character. I don't think he'll ever, or nor should he be retired. But maybe they need to take a break from movies, Maybe since there's so much ground they have to cover now, since there's so much history in the franchise and so many characters to go over, maybe streaming is the next best step. Hey, it's Paramount. Paramount Plus, baby, right? And they would have, therefore, 6 to 8 hours to do this instead of just 2. They really could use the extra time. I'd love to see Gale Weathers, Jasmine Savoy Brown, and Mason Gooding take over as the leads, right? As they investigate a new Ghostface killer. Sort of an edgier, more violent, only murders in the building. I think that would be fun. And it would give Scream a whole new area of meta commentary about streaming and podcasts and all those things. And I think the franchise would handle it really well. I would love that. I think that would be the next best thing. What do you think is the future of Scream? So that's my non-spoiler review of Scream 7. Although, as I said, there's a very good chance a lot of you have already seen a spoiler or two because they are aplenty online. With people being particularly aggressive against this installment because of the Melissa Barrera situation. But, even if you've seen a spoiler or two, I think you still could enjoy this movie because a lot of it is in the execution. And I do think the kills and the scenarios are very well done. And it's fun to see some of these characters again, or to meet characters like Joel McHale. It definitely has its moments. If you want to go see a good popcorn movie, I think this definitely qualifies. And maybe it also, I'm not sure what the audience interaction might be, but it might be fun for a movie like this still. I do understand, though, that some of you are boycotting the film because of what happened with Melissa Barrera. And that's a totally understandable and justifiable position to take. But I do wonder if you will ever come back to Scream, right? And what would it take to get you back? Or are you done? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.